Somebody left a comment under one of my videos. They wanted me to list the supplements I use as nootropics or brain stimulating supplements, and I do use quite a few of them. It's a controversial subject. These are compounds that supposedly increase such brain functions as focus, concentration, learning, memory, and actually may even improve intelligence in some cases. I hasten to add that using any of these supplements or even the drug forms are not going to turn a blithering idiot into a genius. It's just not going to happen. Unfortunately, I wish there was a drug like that. We'd all live better lives if people had better thinking abilities, especially critical thinking abilities. But that's a whole different story. But they wanted to know. Well, let's talk about nootropic. Nootropic basically is derived from an ancient Greek term. It means mind turning. The term was actually first coined by a scientist in 1972, and he said that nootropics would have the following characteristics. They should enhance learning and memory. They should enhance the resistance of learned behaviors and memories to conditions that tend to disrupt them, such as electroconvulsive shock and hypoxia or lack of oxygen. They should protect the brain against various physical or chemical injuries. They should increase the efficacy of the tonic cortical control mechanisms. They should lack the usual pharmacology of other psychotropic drugs such as sedation drugs or motor stimulation drugs, and possess few adverse effects with low toxicity. Now, a lot of there's a ton of websites that, before I go into my specific, let's say, brain supplement program, I should say there's a ton of, I couldn't even tell you how many. There's many sites that are selling the so-called nootropics and brain supplements, and a lot of them make these claims about them which don't exist in any medical literature at all. Most of the claims made for them are anecdotal. In other words, they will talk about what a particular nootropic supplement did for them, with the idea that if you take it, you're going to get the exact same result, which isn't always the case, because human brains can differ. For example, my personal feeling is that a lot of the nutritional nootropics will definitely work better in people over 40. The reason for that is that you're probably familiar that as people age, things start to slow down the body. Like, for example, men, when they hit about 40, they often show lower testosterone levels. Women's estrogen levels start to drop or decline. That's menopause. And there's other things that change in the body. Unfortunately, there are certain brain changes that occur. You probably heard of senior moments, where brief moments of forgetfulness, where they can't, let's say, remember where they put their keys or something like that. Or they can't, have a little bit of difficulty recalling names. So when an older person who is experiencing these minimal cognitive deficits, as they're called, if they take some of these nootropic subs or smart, let's call them smart drugs, smart nutrients, if they take them, I think they will definitely notice a difference. However, if somebody, let's say in their early 20s or younger, or even up to 30s, and who has full brain function, has no brain problems, no memory problems, if they take this, the effects they get, if anything, will probably be a placebo effect, because their brain is, let's say, working on maximum brain power as it is, which again varies among individuals. As I don't have to tell you, some people are a lot smarter than others. Many reasons for that, way too deep to get into in this video, but some people are just a lot smarter than others. But anyway, just with those things, another problem, by the way, with some of these, particularly the nutritional nootropics or smart nutrient, is that, as I said, there's a lot of websites selling them, but they've done analysis in the medical literature where scientists have purchased online many of these so-called smart nutrient supplements, and they found that they either were low potency or didn't even contain the substances they were listed on the label as containing. That's the problem that they have with underground, steroids and drugs and peptides. It's an ongoing problem. When you purchase things online, you really aren't 100% sure of what you're getting. Now, I found a couple of nootropic sites that are willing to supply multiple lab analysis of their supplements. So that's where I get my nootropics. I'm not going to talk about specific brands because that would turn this video into a commercial. And that you already have 98% of other YouTube videos are basically heavily commercialized, where the people who do the video are either pushing somebody else's brand or pushing their own brand. I'm not going to do this here. I'm not making this video to make other people wealthy. Rather, I'm doing the video because there was a request where somebody wanted to know what I used for my brain stimulation. Now, I will also add that I use these substances mainly when I have to use my brain intensely. And that would, for my case, that would be writing. I write my Applied Metabolics publication. I research it. I edit it. This is when I use these nutritional nootropics. At other times, I use certain ones, which I'll explain, but I don't use, let's say the heavy hitters. I save that from when I need intense focus and concentration, which is when I'm writing. So that, with that in mind. So let's talk about some of the basic nootropics that I use. The first and foremost, of course, would be caffeine. Believe it or not, caffeine is a kind of a smart substance. It stimulates the brain. A lot of people who drink coffee, they do it mainly for brain stimulation, to wake them up. Coffee has been shown in studies to increase alertness and attentional performance. In fact, one of the most basic smart nutrient combinations involves taking about 200 milligrams of caffeine, which is equivalent to about 2 cups of coffee, and combining it with 100 to 200 milligrams of an amino acid called theanine, L-theanine. Now, why would you take that combination? Well, the caffeine stimulates alertness and it stimulates the brain, but depending on how much caffeine you consume, it might overstimulate the brain, cause a little jitteriness, can cause anxiety, make some people nervous, especially if they have certain what they call genetic polymorphisms, where they tend to break down caffeine in the liver a little bit slower than normal. They tend to get a little bit of side effects. Now, what the theanine does is it takes the edge off the jitteriness and the overstimulation that could be caused by caffeine, but the theanine does not sedate you. That's the good thing about it. It takes the edge off nervousness and jitteriness that could be induced by caffeine, but it does not sedate you. And many people have found that this combination of caffeine and theanine is a very effective brain stimulant. I don't use any drugs, strong drugs. Amphetamine theoretically is also a type of nootropic because it improves cognitive functions such as memory, working memory. It increases attention. However, amphetamine is way too dangerous to take. It can cause brain damage. It's way overboard, overkill. No, I would never take an amphetamine. There's another very popular drug called modafinil that is a kind of a weaker form of amphetamine. It's favored by so-called high-tech workers and stuff. It was actually developed for British pilots who had all overnight missions to keep them awake. It's used to treat a condition called narcolepsy, where you suddenly fall asleep. So it's a wakefulness promoting agent. And some people, for some reason, think that it also increases brain function. But the studies with modafinil show a kind of a strange effect, meaning that if you're already have a sharp mind, tend to be on the intelligent side, and you take modafinil, it will actually increase your focus and concentration. That's why a lot of people who work in the stock market use it in Silicon Valley and all that stuff. However, if you tend to be stupid and slow, Don't ask me why, but it makes you even dumber and slower. So it's something to think about. Now, I purchased modafinil. It requires a prescription. I purchased it, and I still have it sitting there in my with the rest of my stuff, and I have never taken it. Why haven't I taken it? Because the main side effect, now remember, modafinil is used medically to treat, to keep you awake. And that's the problem with modafinil. It can last many hours in the body, and it can also induce insomnia. Now, I already have insomnia, so I don't want to. I'm afraid to take a drug that could actually make it worse. So for that reason, I've never used modafinil. It might actually work. I've never tried it. Nicotine is also associated with improved alertness, attention, memory, but of course nicotine is a poison. It's one of the negative ingredients in cigarettes. The idea of taking nicotine to improve brain function, to me, is nuts. However, there is a certain group of people that say microdosing nicotine, in other words, taking nicotine in very small amounts, will stimulate the brain without causing any other medical problems. I am not interested in that. I think the stuff that I use is far safer. I would not try it. So what do I use? Let's talk about it. Okay, what I use there's a substance called vinpocetine. Vinpocetine is derived from a substance that itself is derived from a plant called the periwinkle plant, which grows in the Amazon rainforest. Other components of this particular plant, the periwinkle plant, were able to cure childhood leukemia that before they discovered this plant was invariably fatal. In other words, this form of leukemia in children was fatal. Now, vinpocetine is the derivative of another substance found in the periwinkle plant. What does it do? Well, it dilates blood vessels in the brain. It can get into the brain, it dilates blood vessels, and increases the delivery of oxygen to the brain. It also increases blood circulation within the brain, and it lowers blood viscosity. In other words, it makes blood thinner, so the blood is able to circulate better. So it's a kind of a minor nootropic. I take it only once a day. I've taken it for a couple of years. When I first started using it, I started with 10 milligrams. Now I take 30 milligrams once a day. And I do take this one every day, whether I'm writing or not. The other one I take every day is called phosphatidylserine, also known as PS. Phosphatidylserine, basically in the brain, it's needed for the let's say the maintenance and structure of cellular membranes around neurons, and it's known to increase brain neurotransmission. It helps the brain work better. There have been studies showing that if you give some older people about 300 milligrams a day of phosphatidylserine, it reduces their brain aging by 12 years. Don't ask me how they figure that out. I don't know. But I use phosphatidylserine, and another thing that it does is it reduces cortisol by about 20, maybe 30% maximum. The larger the dose of phosphatidylserine, the greater the cortisol-releasing effect in relation to the brain. Cortisol, which is released during high-stress conditions, it's an adrenal steroid hormone. Unfortunately, cortisol has a tendency to destroy neurons in the brain, and a leading theory as to what causes the so-called senior moments experienced by older people, it's from a lifetime of cortisol slowly destroying neurons in the brain, which affects the working memory. So I take I take 400 milligrams a day of phosphatidylserine. I take 200 milligrams twice a day. The next one is an herb called Bacopa monnieri. Bacopa monnieri has been used for thousands of years in Ayurvedic medicine, which is the medicine of ancient India. It's been used for thousands of years to help treat memory and brain problems. It increases cognition. What do I use? I use about 300 milligrams a day, standardized for at least 50% bacopicides. That's the active ingredient at Bacopa monnieri. Now, the thing about Bacopa is because it's a natural herbal substance, it doesn't work like a drug. This is true for most herbs. It takes a bit of time to kick in. Now, in case of Bacopa, if you use it as a brain stimulant, don't expect to feel anything for at least 3 or 4 months after you start taking. It takes a while to kind of build up and start to work. But I have noticed definite benefits, and I do take Bacopa all the time. The next one's Huperzine A. Huperzine A is derived from a plant called the Chinese moss. And what Huperzine A does, it inhibits an enzyme called acetylcholinesterase, which breaks down a neurotransmitter in the brain called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is one of the primary neurotransmitters in the hippocampus area of the brain, which is one of the main seats of memory and learning in the brain. Huperzine A duplicates the effects of some of the current drugs used to forestall the effects of Alzheimer's disease. In Alzheimer's disease, there's often a deficiency of acetylcholine, and this stuff, Huperzine A, by inhibiting the enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine, will increase acetylcholine in the brain. However, I don't take Huperzine A all the time. I take it about every 4 days because it has a long half-life. It actually lasts for about 72 hours in the body once you take it orally. I do take a form of choline. Choline is actually the raw material for acetylcholine, that neurotransmitter I just mentioned. Not all forms of choline can get into the brain, get through the protective blood-brain barrier. This is a blood vessels that selectively only allow certain substances to enter the brain. It's a protective device, and most forms of choline do not enter the brain. One of the few that does is called alpha GPC, and alpha GPC also has a slight growth hormone stimulating effect. I use alpha GPC. I take 300 milligrams, again, only when I'm involved in intense brain work. I don't take it every day. Another one I take is uridine. Uridine is involved in helping to boost dendrites, which are connections between neurons, and hopefully would increase neural transmission in the brain. Another one, then I take what some people consider drugs, what are referred to as smart drugs. I use actually 4. The first one I use is phenylpiracetam. Phenylpiracetam is in a group of drugs called Racetams. Nobody really knows how these drugs work. A lot of them were developed in Russia. There's a lot of controversy about them. They were developed to treat cognition deficits in older people, such as people with, let's say, dementia or Alzheimer's disease, that type of thing. They were not developed for healthy people. However, they do increase brain neurotransmitters involved in memory and intelligence and mental focus. So phenylpiracetam has a slight kind of speed effect. In other words, it doesn't, not like coffee, it doesn't make you jittery, but it has a slight stimulant effect to the extent that it's actually been banned in athletic competition because of some athletic authorities think it works like speed. It does not. All it does is kind of like make your brain more alert. That's what it basically does. Another racetam I use is oxiracetam. Oxiracetam has a reputation for increasing learning and memory. I've seen a couple of studies on oxiracetam saying that in healthy people it does absolutely nothing. That has not been my experience. I notice about oxiracetam, it takes about an hour or 2 to kick in. But once it does, I notice that I have increased mental focus. I take about 100 milligrams of that. Same with the phenylpiracetam, 100 milligrams. Ataracetam is still another racetam. That one I use about 300 milligrams. And it basically duplicates the effects of the other racetams. I should point out, I do not take all 3 of these racetams. I alternate. Like one day I'll take phenylpiracetam, then I'll take the next day oxiracetam, and then but I take the aniracetam every time I take the other 2. And the next one that I alternate, again, I don't take it every day, is called Noopept. Noopept was developed in Russia. It was actually developed for Russian cosmonauts to increase their focus and mental cognition while they were on space missions. And it's not a racetam, but it has a pretty good effect at increasing focus and concentration. I use a nutrient called acetyl L-carnitine. Acetyl L-carnitine helps maintain mitochondria in the brain, which are the energy source of cells in the brain and elsewhere. And the last one I used was the very first smart nutrient that I ever used was ginkgo biloba. Ginkgo is the oldest tree. It's been around since the age of the dinosaurs. And similar to vinpocetine, ginkgo increases blood circulation in the brain. And the studies have varied. Some studies show that it does increase brain function. Other studies show that it doesn't. But again, it depends. I believe it'll, just like I said earlier, all of these things will work better if you're over 40. Because most people over 40 are already showing a little bit of brain deficits. Not to the point where they get dementia, but let's say slight memory problems. They, trouble remembering names, that type of thing, senior moments. This stuff, I think, will help. When I first used ginkgo way back in the early 90s, I was writing for bodybuilding magazines, and I took it, and I didn't feel anything until about the third or fourth month I took it. Remember, it's an herb, and herbs take a long time. And what happened was I used to have a maximum writing time. When I say maximum, I mean maximum focus and concentration. It used to be about 2 hours. After that, I'd start to kind of fade. I couldn't focus, and I'd have to stop writing. One day, after about 3 months after using ginkgo, I lost track of time. I was so into the writing. And when I stopped, I realized I had been writing for 11 straight hours with no loss of focus and concentration. And the only thing I was using was ginkgo. So I believe, even though I was not that old back then, I believe that ginkgo definitely did help me. So I think that covers it. Those are the ones that I've. Omega-3 fatty acids, they're not really nootropics, but since the brain is composed of 40% DHA, which is an omega-3 fatty acid, it's very good for the brain. It doesn't really do much for cognition, although some studies say it helps prevent depression. And let me see, I think that really covers it. That's my complete brain program. As I said, I don't take all these all the time, but I do take mainly the Racetams when I'm involved in intense brain work that involves increased focus and concentration. So that's about it for my personal brain program. I do think that at my age, this stuff really is an advantage to me. I haven't tried to work without them. I don't know what the difference would be, but I definitely notice that when I use them about an hour after they kick in, I'm very, very effective at word recall, memory, focus, and concentration. So again, this stuff will I hate to be redundant, but my belief is that these things will work better if you already have a little bit of memory or brain problems, which most people over 40 have. If you're very young, it's probably a waste of money to use any of these stuff, contrary to what a lot of those websites who sell some of these substances, they'll tell you, 20-year-olds, you take this and it'll make you a genius. That's all a bunch of bullshit. Don't believe it. It's not true. Anyway, that's about it. If you want more information, by the way, I cover smart drugs and nutrients regularly in my Applied Metabolics. If you want more in-depth information about these substances, including how they work and the chemistry behind everything, it's all in my Applied Metabolics. I also cover nutrition, exercise science, anti-aging research, supplement science, which ones work, which ones don't, effective fat loss techniques, hormone therapy, women's health and fitness. I cover more topics in Applied Metabolics than any other digital publication on the internet. I have over 6 decades, 60 years of experience. I have over 12,000 published articles. I've been a professional writer for nearly half a century, so I know how to write for the public. Everything is easily understandable in Applied Metabolics. So subscribe today. It's www.appliedmetabolics.com. When you subscribe, send me an email, and I'll send you an invitation to join my private Applied Metabolics Facebook page, where each day I post new information on nutrition, exercise science, and general health and medicine. I have an email portal on my Applied Metabolics webpage where current subscribers can send me short questions about anything they read in Applied Metabolics or anything they're curious about related to nutrition, exercise, and I will answer their question as a bonus or appreciation for their subscription. That only applies to current subscribers of Applied Metabolics. So again, subscribe today. It's 30 to 40 pages, no ads, no BS, just straight evidence-based information that includes my over 6 decades of experience. Again, appliedmetabolics.com. Feel free to subscribe to this YouTube channel. It's completely free. I post new videos every Tuesday. And please tell others about my channel. And that's about all I could say here. If you want to have the best friend you'll ever have, go to your local shelter, adopt a dog.